The transport ship Meridian's Grace shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, its hull groaning under the stress of the violent transition. Captain Marcus Chen steadied himself against the command console, watching the swirling colors of the hyperspace tunnel collapse into the stark blackness of normal space. Around him, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to assess the damage from their emergency jump. "Status report," Marcus called out, his voice cutting through the chaos of alarms and shouted orders.
Lieutenant Sarah Kim looked up from her console, her face pale. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Captain. We've lost atmosphere in sections 12 through 15. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but barely."
"Casualties?" "Unknown at this time, sir. Medical teams are responding." Marcus nodded grimly.
They had been lucky to escape the hegemony patrol at all. The alien alliance that controlled most of this sector of space didn't take kindly to human vessels in their territory, especially not ones carrying refugees from their latest conquest.
"Sir," Communications Officer Torres called out, "I'm picking up a distress signal. Short range, very weak. Put it through." The speakers crackled to life, filled with static and interference. Through the noise a voice emerged, young, desperate, speaking in broken Standard Galactic. "Please, anyone, help us. Ship dying.
Air, almost gone. We are just children. Please."
The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Marcus felt his jaw clench. In the 3 years since humanity had been forced into the galactic community, he had seen too much suffering, too much cruelty disguised as order. "Can you get a fix on that signal?" he asked Torres.
"Working on it, sir. It's coming from there." She pointed to a debris field visible on the main screen. "Looks like the remains of a civilian transport."
"Life signs?" Science Officer Patel ran his hands over his console. "Faint, but yes."
"I'm reading approximately 40 life forms in what appears to be an escape pod or small vessel. Biosignatures are unfamiliar." Marcus studied the debris field. "Standard procedure would be to avoid any potential complications. They were already operating outside hegemony space without proper authorization, carrying refugees that the galactic community had deemed undesirable. Taking on more would only increase their risk."
"Sir," Torres spoke up again, "the signal's getting weaker. Whatever power source they're using, it won't last much longer." Through the static, the voice came again. "Mother, Father, I'm sorry we couldn't save you. Someone, please. My little sister is hurt. She needs medicine. Please." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his decision was made. Navigation, plot an intercept course. "Engine room, I need whatever power you can give me for the tractor beam. Medical, prepare for incoming casualties. Unknown species. Unknown injuries." Captain, his first officer, Commander Walsh, stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Sir, with respect, we're already overloaded. The refugees we picked up from Kepler Station are barely managing in the cargo holds. Our supplies are stretched thin, and if the hegemony finds us, I understand your concerns, Commander. But I won't leave children to die in the vacuum of space." Walsh's expression softened slightly. "I understand, sir, but the crew, morale is already low. Taking on more refugees, especially non-human ones." Marcus turned to face his crew. He could see the doubt in their eyes, the fear of what lay ahead. They were all tired, all pushed to their limits. But there was something else there too, a flicker of hope. A reminder of who they used to be before the galaxy had shown them its true face. "Listen to me, all of you," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the bridge. 3 years ago, when the hegemony first made contact with Earth, they promised us partnership. They promised us a place among the stars as equals. Instead, they gave us servitude. They scattered our colonies, displaced our families, and told us to be grateful for the privilege. He gestured toward the main screen where the debris field drifted in the cold emptiness of space. "Out there are children who are about to die because no one else will help them. Because in this galaxy, compassion is seen as weakness. Because helping those who cannot help themselves is considered inefficient." Marcus's voice grew stronger. "I've seen what happens when we abandon our humanity for the sake of survival. I've seen good people become monsters because they convinced themselves they had no choice." The bridge was silent except for the steady beeping of the distress signal. "We are not the hegemony. We are not the consortium or the Trade Federation. We are human, and that still means something." Navigation maintained course. The Meridian's Grace changed direction, moving toward the debris field with purpose. As they approached, the scale of the destruction became clear. What had once been a passenger vessel now existed only as twisted metal and scattered debris. Atmosphere and bodies floated among the wreckage, preserved by the cold vacuum of space. "Dear God," someone whispered. In the center of the debris field,
Barely visible against the dark hull of a destroyed engine section was a small escape pod. Its hull was scorched and pitted, emergency lights blinking weakly in the darkness. "Tractor beam locked on target," reported the helmsman. "Bring them in, carefully." The pod was smaller than Marcus had expected, barely large enough for a dozen adults. As it settled into the Meridian's Grace's cargo bay, teams of technicians and medical personnel rushed to assist. Marcus made his way down to the cargo bay, arriving just as the pod's hatch began to cycle open. The first thing that hit him was the smell, not unpleasant, but alien, sweet and earthy like flowers growing in rich soil. Then came the sound of coughing and weak voices speaking in a language he didn't recognize. The hatch opened fully, and Marcus got his first look at the survivors. They were young, just as the distress call had indicated. The oldest couldn't have been more than 16 or 17 in human years. Their appearance was striking, humanoid in basic structure, but clearly alien. Their skin had a pale blue tint with darker markings that resembled intricate tattoos but appeared to be natural. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, a deep violet color that seemed to reflect light like gemstones. Most had long, silver-white hair that moved as if underwater, even in the artificial gravity of the cargo bay. But what struck Marcus most was their condition. They were clearly malnourished, their clothes torn and dirty. Several bore obvious injuries, burns, cuts, and what looked like the effects of prolonged exposure to radiation. The youngest, a girl who couldn't have been more than 10, was unconscious in the arms of an older girl who was trying desperately to wake her. "Please," the older girl said in broken standard, looking up at Marcus with those violet eyes. "She needs help. The medicine ran out days ago. She won't wake up." Dr. Rebecca Santos, the Meridian's Grace's chief medical officer, was already moving among the survivors, her scanner working overtime. "Multiple cases of malnutrition and dehydration," she reported. "Several show signs of radiation poisoning. This little one," she knelt beside the unconscious girl. "She's in critical condition, some kind of metabolic disorder, exacerbated by stress and poor nutrition. Can you help her? I'll need to run more tests, but yes, I think so. The basic physiology is similar enough to human that our medical database should have some applicable treatments." Marcus looked around the cargo bay. It was already crowded with human refugees from their previous rescue, families huddled together with their few possessions. The addition of 40 more individuals, even small ones, would strain their resources even further. But as he watched his crew work to help the alien children, he saw something he hadn't seen in months. Hope. Purpose. They weren't just running anymore. They were doing something that mattered. "Commander Walsh," he called to his first officer, who had followed him down to the cargo bay. "Have the quartermaster run an inventory on our supplies, food, water, medical equipment. I need to know exactly what we're working with." "Aye, sir." One of the alien girls, perhaps 14 years old, approached Marcus cautiously. Unlike the others, her clothes, though dirty, showed signs of having once been fine quality. There was something in her bearing that suggested authority or nobility. "You are the leader of this ship?" she asked in carefully pronounced standard. "I am Captain Chen, yes." She straightened, attempting a formal posture despite her obvious exhaustion. "I am Lyrian Veltar, daughter of Counselor Veltar of the Third Circle of Andros Prime. We are grateful for your assistance, Captain Chen, but I must warn you, helping us puts you in great danger." Marcus studied her face. Despite her youth, there was a maturity in her eyes born of trauma and loss. "What happened to your ship?" Lyrian's composure cracked slightly. "We were fleeing. The hegemony, they came to our world 3 cycles ago. They said we were to be relocated for our own protection. But the relocation camps," she shuddered. "Many of our people died there, worked to death in the mines, or from diseases our bodies could not fight." "How did you escape?" "My father, he had friends among the transport crews. They helped us get aboard a refugee ship heading for the Outer Rim. But the hegemony followed us. Their warships destroyed our transport yesterday." We barely made it to the escape pod. Marcus felt a familiar anger building in his chest. The hegemony's relocation programs were well known among human refugees. Entire species had been displaced, their worlds strip-mined for resources, their populations scattered or enslaved. "How many worlds have they taken now?" he asked. 17 in the past year alone," Lyrian replied. "The Galactic Council claims they cannot intervene. They say it is an internal matter of hegemony space." Her voice turned bitter, "But we know the truth. They profit from it. The resources flow through Council space to reach the core worlds." Dr. Santos approached, her scanner still in hand. "Captain, I need to speak with you privately." They stepped away from the group of refugees. What is it, Doctor? These aren't just random alien children, Marcus. Their physiology, I've seen something like this before. In the classified xenobiology reports from the Kepler incident, Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Kepler incident was classified at the highest levels, but rumors had spread through the human fleet. An entire hegemony research facility had been destroyed, along with evidence of illegal genetic experimentation on captured alien populations. Are you saying these children are enhanced, modified? Their neural pathways show signs of artificial augmentation, and their cellular structure has been altered in ways that I've never seen occur naturally. Santos lowered her voice. Marcus, I think these children are survivors of hegemony experiments, and if that's true, the hegemony will stop at nothing to get them back. Before Marcus could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain, to the bridge immediately. We have incoming vessels. Marcus rushed back to the bridge, taking the stairs 3 at a time. When he arrived, the main screen showed 3 ships approaching from hyperspace. Their configuration was unmistakable. Hegemony warships. How long until they're in weapons range? Marcus asked. 12 minutes at current approach speed, Lieutenant Kim reported. They're hailing us, sir, Torres added. Put them through. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of a hegemony cruiser. The alien commander was a Kethvar, one of the founding members of the Hegemony Alliance. His scaled face and cold, reptilian eyes showed no emotion as he spoke. Human vessel, you are in violation of hegemony space. You will surrender the stolen property you have recovered and submit to immediate inspection. Marcus kept his voice steady. This is Captain Chen of the civilian transport Meridian's Grace. We are conducting humanitarian rescue operations. The survivors we recovered were in distress and in danger of dying. The Kethvar commander's eyes narrowed. The specimens you recovered are valuable hegemony assets. They will be returned immediately. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your vessel. Specimens? Marcus couldn't keep the disgust out of his voice. These are children, not laboratory animals. They are property of the hegemony, created by hegemony science for hegemony purposes. Your species' tendency toward misplaced compassion will not protect you here, human. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Orders, sir? Commander Walsh asked. Marcus looked at the tactical display. 3 hegemony cruisers against 1 damaged human transport. There was no way they could fight their way out, but surrendering meant condemning the children to a fate worse than death. Navigation. Is there anywhere we can run to? Any system that might offer shelter? The only inhabited system within range is Freehold Station, the navigator reported. But sir, that's in neutral space. The hegemony technically has no authority there, but they might attack anyway, Marcus finished. How long to reach Freehold? At maximum burn, 47 minutes. And the hegemony ships? They'll intercept us in 11 minutes. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind racing. There had to be something, some option he wasn't seeing. Captain, Torres spoke up suddenly. I'm receiving a tight beam transmission from one of the refugee children. She's asking to speak with you. Put her through. Lyrian's voice came through the speakers, calm despite the circumstances. Captain Chen, my name is Lyrian. I know what those ships want. They want us back because we carry information that could expose their experiments to the galaxy. Information that could end their research programs forever. What kind of information? Genetic sequences, facility locations, the names of species they've been experimenting on. My father hid the data in our neural implants before the escape. The hegemony has been violating every galactic treaty on sentient rights, but they've been careful to hide the evidence. Until now, Marcus felt a spark of hope. Are you saying you have proof of their war crimes? More than proof. We have the complete database of their biological weapons research, their plans for genetic manipulation of conquered species, and communications between hegemony leadership and certain members of the Galactic Council. Lyrian's voice grew stronger. Captain, if this information reaches the right people, it could change everything, but only if we survive long enough to deliver it. The proximity alarm began blaring. On the main screen, hegemony ships had closed to weapons range. Sir, Lieutenant Kim called out. They're charging their weapons. Marcus made his decision. All power to engines. Emergency acceleration. Navigation, plot the fastest possible course to Freehold Station. The Meridian's Grace lurched forward as its engines screamed to maximum output. Behind them, the hegemony ships opened fire, their energy beams slicing through the space where the human ship had been moments before. Evasive maneuvers, Marcus ordered. Buy us as much time as you can. The ship rolled and twisted as the helmsman fought to avoid the incoming fire. The lights flickered as power was redirected from non-essential systems to the engines and shields. "Sir," Torres reported, "Freehold Station is responding to our distress call. They're launching ships to intercept us." "How many?" "I count 6 vessels, mixed configuration. Looks like independent merchants and a couple of modified military ships." Marcus allowed himself a moment of surprise. Freehold Station was notorious for its neutrality, rarely getting involved in conflicts between major powers. Robin, honesties. But apparently even they had limits. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of weapons fire, evasive maneuvers, and desperate engineering as the crew fought to keep their ship together. The hegemony ships were faster and better armed, but the Meridian's Grace had something they didn't expect: a crew willing to risk everything for the sake of others. Just as their shields were beginning to fail, salvation appeared on the sensors. 6 ships from Freehold Station, led by a heavily modified cruiser that had seen better days but still bristled with weapons. "Hegemony vessels," came a gruff voice over the communications channel. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the independent vessel Defiance. You are ordered to cease fire and withdraw from neutral space immediately." The response from the Hegemony commander was predictable. "Independent vessel, you have no authority here. Withdraw or be destroyed." "Baby," Rodriguez replied, his voice carrying a note of grim humor. "But you see, we've got friends coming. Take a look at your long-range sensors." Marcus watched his own sensors with growing amazement. More ships were appearing at the edge of the system, dozens of them, from multiple species and factions. Word of the confrontation had apparently spread quickly through the underground networks that connected the galaxy's outcasts and refugees. The Hegemony commander must have seen the same thing because the weapons fire stopped. For a long moment, the two fleets faced each other across the emptiness of space. Finally, the Kethvar spoke again. "This is not over, humans. The specimens will be returned to us. The Hegemony has a long memory." The 3 warships turned and jumped back into hyperspace, leaving the Meridian's Grace under the protection of the growing fleet of independent vessels. Marcus sank into his captain's chair, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. Around him, the bridge crew began the process of shutting down from battle stations. They had won this round, but at what cost? "Captain," Lyrian's voice came through the speakers again. "Thank you. I know what you risked for us. It's not over yet," Marcus replied. "We still need to get you and your information to safety." "Yes, but for the first time since my world fell, I have hope." "You showed the galaxy something today, Captain Chen. You showed them that someone still cares about doing what's right regardless of the cost." Marcus looked out at the collection of ships that had come to their aid: pirates, merchants, refugees, and outcasts from a dozen different species. Not one of them had anything to gain from helping, but they had come anyway. "Maybe," he said quietly, "maybe we showed ourselves something too." Freehold Station hung in the void like a massive mechanical flower, its docking arms extended to embrace the stream of ships seeking sanctuary. Marcus had never seen the notorious neutral station so busy. Word of the Hegemony confrontation had spread through the underground networks faster than light itself, drawing ships from across the sector. The Meridian's Grace settled into its assigned berth with a shudder of magnetic clamps engaging. Through the viewports, Marcus could see the controlled chaos of the docking bay's cargo haulers unloading supplies, repair crews swarming over damaged vessels, and countless beings from dozens of species moving with purpose through the corridors. "Captain, Doctor," Santos called from the medical bay over the intercom. "You need to see this." Marcus made his way through the ship, noting how the human refugees they had rescued from Kepler Station were helping to settle the alien children. Despite the language barriers and the obvious differences in biology, compassion seemed to translate universally. Children were children, regardless of species. In the medical bay, Dr. Santos was reviewing scan results on her workstation. The unconscious alien girl Lyrian had said her name was Kira, lay on a biobed surrounded by monitoring equipment. "What's her condition?" Marcus asked. "Stable for now. But Marcus, you need to understand what we're dealing with here." Santos pulled up a holographic display of the child's brain structure. "These neural pathways, they're not natural. Someone has artificially enhanced these children's cognitive abilities." "Enhanced how?" "Memory capacity has been increased by at least 400%. Information processing speeds are off the charts." She highlighted a section of the scan. "These neural clusters don't exist in any known species. They've been grown, probably using a combination of genetic manipulation and nanotechnology." Marcus studied the display with growing horror. "They turned them into living computers. Worse than that, the modifications are tied to their emotional centers. The children can't forget anything they've experienced. Every trauma, every moment of pain or fear, It's all stored with perfect clarity. Santos's voice was tight with anger. Whoever did this made it impossible for them to heal psychologically. Before Marcus could respond, Lyrian appeared in the doorway. She had cleaned up and changed into clothes donated by the human refugees, but her violet eyes still carried the weight of too much knowledge for someone so young. Dr. Santos is correct, Lyrian said quietly. We remember everything. The hegemony scientists said it was necessary for us to function as information repositories. They wanted living databases that could never be corrupted or erased. How many of you are there? Marcus asked gently. 43 survived the escape. Originally, there were over 300 children from 17 different species in the research facility. Lyrian's composure remained steady, but Marcus could see the pain beneath. The others died during the experiments or when the facility was attacked. Attacked by who? We don't know. The alarms went off, there were explosions, and our handlers fled. In the confusion, some of the older children managed to override the containment systems. We escaped, but barely. Doctor. Santos leaned forward. Lyrian, the information you carry, how dangerous is it to you physically? Are there any safeguards or triggers we should know about? The neural implants have security protocols. If the hegemony recaptures us, they can download the information without harming us. But if anyone else tries to extract it forcibly, Lyrian paused. The implants will activate a lethal feedback loop. We would die instantly. Marcus felt a chill. So the hegemony needs you alive and cooperative. Yes. Which is why they will never stop hunting us. The information we carry could destabilize their entire empire. Details of illegal experiments, plans for biological weapons, communications proving that several Galactic Council members are secretly supporting their research. Lyrian met Marcus's eyes. Captain, we carry the power to start a war that could reshape the galaxy. The medical bay's communication system chimed. Captain Chen to station control immediately, came the announcement. Marcus sighed. Stay with Dr. Santos. Don't leave the ship until I know more about the situation here. Freehold Station's control center was a marvel of organized chaos. Representatives from dozens of species worked side by side, monitoring the constant flow of traffic through one of the galaxy's most important neutral ports. Station Administrator Vega Thorne was a tall, lean woman with cybernetic implants that marked her as a veteran of the corporate wars. She turned as Marcus approached, her expression grim. Captain Chen, quite a stir you've caused out there. I didn't start this, Administrator. We were just trying to save some children. And in doing so, you've put my station in a very difficult position. Thorne gestured to a holographic display showing the space around the station. Hegemony ships have been taking positions just outside neutral space. They're not technically violating any treaties, but the message is clear. Marcus studied the tactical display. At least 20 hegemony warships had formed a loose perimeter around the system. They couldn't attack without causing a diplomatic incident, but they could wait and watch. What do they want? Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. They want you to voluntarily surrender the alien refugees. They've even offered compensation, enough credits to buy your ship twice over. Thorne's eyes were unreadable. Of course, we both know what happens to refugees who get compensated back to the hegemony. Before Marcus could respond, another voice cut through the noise of the control center. Administrator Thorne, I need to speak with Captain Chen immediately. Marcus turned to see a figure approaching that made several conversations stop mid-sentence. The newcomer was tall and imposing, wearing the distinctive dark uniform of the Galactic Intelligence Service. But it wasn't the uniform that drew stares, it was the species. The figure was human, but clearly modified with extensive cybernetic enhancements. One eye had been replaced with a sensor array, and metallic patches on the visible skin suggested internal modifications as well. Agent Kane, Administrator Thorne said carefully. I wasn't aware GIS was taking an interest in this situation. The Galactic Council has concerns about the developing situation, Kane replied, his voice carrying an electronic undertone from vocal modifications. Captain Chen, I need to speak with you privately. Thorne gestured to a side office. Use conference room 3. It's shielded. Once they were alone, Kane's demeanor changed subtly. The official bearing remained, but there was something more personal underneath. Captain, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. The refugees you rescued aren't just experimental subjects. They're witnesses to the largest violation of galactic law since the Extinction Wars. I'm listening. Kane activated a small device that projected a holographic star map. 6 months ago, the hegemony began Operation Clean Slate. A systematic program to eliminate or relocate any species that might pose a future threat to their expansion.
17 worlds have been targeted so far, their populations either destroyed or subjected to genetic modification. And the Galactic Council? Officially, they know nothing.
Unofficially, Kane's expression darkened. 3 council members are direct beneficiaries of hegemony research. They've been blocking any investigation into the disappearances.
Marcus felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. The children carry proof of this. More than proof. What was? They carry the complete operational records, including communications between hegemony leadership and their council allies. If this information reaches the independent media networks, it could bring down the current council government. Marcus finished.
And start a war that would consume half the galaxy, Kane added grimly. The question is whether that war is necessary to stop something even worse. Kane deactivated the hologram and stepped closer. Captain, I'm going to tell you something that could get me executed for treason. I'm not here officially.
The mission I was given was to ensure that the information the children carry never reaches the public. Marcus tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his sidearm. Kane noticed the movement and smiled sadly. Relax, Captain.
I said that was my mission. I didn't say I was going to complete it.
He paused. I've seen the classified reports from the hegemony research facilities.
I've read the plans for what they call biological optimization of conquered populations. If they're not stopped now, they'll turn every species in the galaxy into purpose-built slaves.
Then help us get these children to safety. It's not that simple. Even if I wanted to help, my own agency would stop me.
They have assets throughout this sector, and my cybernetics can be tracked. Kane touched the sensor array that had replaced his eye, but there might be another way. Before he could explain, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Through the office's viewport, Marcus could see ships moving in the distance, hegemony vessels changing position, moving closer to the neutral zone.
Kane's expression grew urgent. They're out of time.
The hegemony is preparing to violate neutral space. They've decided the risk of diplomatic consequences is worth it to get those children back.
Marcus activated his communicator. Commander Walsh, prepare the ship for immediate departure. All hands to stations.
Sir, we haven't finished repairs yet. The hull breach on Deck 7 is still. Do what you can in the next 10 minutes.
We're leaving whether the ship is ready or not. Kane grabbed Marcus's arm.
Wait. There's something else you need to know. The children aren't the only ones carrying sensitive information.
What do you mean? Your ship's computer logs recorded everything that happened during the rescue. Communications, sensor readings, tactical data.
If the hegemony gets hold of that, Marcus understood immediately. They'll be able to track down anyone else who might have copies of the information, including the networks that have been helping hegemony refugees. Thousands of lives could be at stake. Kane paused. But there's a way to protect them.
The children can transfer their information to your ship's computer, then purge their own neural implants. The hegemony would recover blank slates, while the real data would be safely hidden in your system.
Hidden how? Kane pulled out a small device about the size of a credit chip. This is a quantum encryption key.
It will hide the data so completely that even I couldn't find it without the access codes. But Captain, Kane's voice grew serious. Once the transfer is complete, your ship becomes the most dangerous target in the galaxy. Everyone will want what you're carrying.
Marcus thought about the alien children in his medical bay, about the human refugees who had trusted him to keep them safe, about the crew members who followed his orders without question. The weight of all those lives pressed down on him.
How long would the transfer take?
About 30 minutes if we start now. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the hegemony ships continuing their advance. They had perhaps an hour before the violation of neutral space became open warfare.
Do it. They rushed back to the Meridian's Grace, where Lyrian was waiting with several of the other alien children. Dr. Santos had managed to stabilize little Kira, though the child remained unconscious.
Lyrian, Marcus said, Agent Kane has a proposal that might keep all of you safe, but it's dangerous and I need you to understand what we're asking. Lyrian listened to Kane's explanation without interruption.
When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You're asking us to trust you with information that cost our people everything, she said finally.
Yes. And in return, you're willing to become targets yourselves, knowing that you'll be hunted for the rest of your lives. Yes. Lyrian turned to the other children, speaking quickly in their native language.
Marcus could see the discussion was intense, with several of the older children asking sharp questions. Finally, Lyrian turned back to him.
We have a condition. Name it. When this is over, when the information has been delivered safely, we want to join your crew. We have skills. Captain Chen.
Enhanced minds, perfect memory.
The ability to process information faster than any computer. We can help you fight them.
Marcus was about to object. They were children. They deserved safety, not more war. But Kane spoke first. Captain, that might actually be the best solution. Scattered across the galaxy, they'd be vulnerable.
But together, as part of a crew that's already committed to fighting the hegemony, they'd be protected by the same skills and resources that got them out of that research facility in the first place. Marcus finished. Lyrian stepped forward.
Captain, you saved us when no one else would. You risked everything for aliens you'd never met.
If you'll have us, we want to stand with you. Marcus looked around at the faces watching him. Alien children who had endured horrors he could barely imagine, but who still had the courage to fight back.
His own crew, who had followed him into danger without question. Agent Kane, who was willing to commit treason for the sake of justice. All right, he said. Let's give the galaxy something to think about. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of activity.
Kane connected the alien children to the ship's computer, using interface cables that had been designed for the neural implants. One by one, terabytes of information flowed from enhanced minds into the Meridian's Grace's databanks. Meanwhile, the crew worked frantically to complete repairs and prepare for departure. The hull breach was patched, though not perfectly.
Emergency supplies were loaded from the station stores. Weapons systems were checked and rechecked.
Transfer complete, Kane announced as the last child disconnected from the interface. The encryption key is installed. As far as anyone scanning your computer will know, you're carrying normal navigation and cargo data. What about the children? Will they be all right? Dr. Habit did not request.
Santos checked her scanner readings. The neural implants are purging the stored data, but the enhanced cognitive structures remain intact. They'll still have their abilities, just not the specific information.
Lyrian swayed slightly as the process completed, but her violet eyes remained clear. It worked, Captain. The data is safe.
Before Marcus could respond, the ship's proximity alarms began wailing. On the main screen, the hegemony fleet was moving, abandoning all pretense of respecting neutral space.
All hands prepare for immediate departure, Marcus announced over the ship-wide intercom. This is going to be rough. The Meridian's Grace separated from Freehold Station just as the first hegemony ships entered the system's defensive perimeter. Behind them, the station's weapons platforms came online, their operators clearly having no intention of allowing their neutrality to be violated without a fight. Navigation, plot a course for the frontier sectors, Marcus ordered. Maximum burn. Sir, Lieutenant Kim called out, I'm showing 57 hegemony vessels moving to intercept. We can't outrun that many ships. Marcus looked at the tactical display, then at Agent Kane, who had taken a position at one of the auxiliary stations. Agent Kane, any suggestions? Kane's cybernetic eye glowed as he accessed the ship's systems.
Actually, yes. Captain, how do you feel about starting a revolution? The Meridian's Grace twisted through space like a wounded bird, its damaged hull groaning under the stress of maximum acceleration.
Behind them, the hegemony fleet spread out in a pursuit formation that had been perfected over centuries of hunting down escaped slaves and refugees. Marcus watched the tactical display with grim fascination. It was like watching a mathematical equation of destruction unfold in real space.
They're hurting us, Commander Walsh observed, studying the enemy formation, forcing us toward the Kronos Nebula. Agent Kane looked up from his console, his cybernetic eye glowing as it processed data streams. That's intentional. The nebula's interference will prevent us from jumping to hyperspace, but it won't affect their pursuit ships. They want us trapped.
Sir, Science Officer Patel called out. I'm detecting unusual readings from the nebula. Energy signatures that don't match standard stellar phenomena.
Marcus moved to look over Patel's shoulder at the sensor displays. What kind of energy signatures? Artificial ones.
Captain, I think there are ships in there. A lot of them. Before anyone could respond, the communications console crackled to life. The voice that emerged was tired, weathered, but unmistakably human. Meridian's Grace, this is Captain Sarah Martinez of the Free Haven. We've been monitoring your situation. Change course to bearing 27 Mark IV and prepare to be escorted. Marcus exchanged glances with his bridge crew. The Free Haven was legendary among human refugees, a converted battle cruiser that had been fighting the hegemony for over 2 years. But it was supposed to be operating in the Outer Rim, hundreds of light years away. Captain Martinez, this is Marcus Chen. Confirmation of your identity, please.
Marcus, you probably don't remember, but we met at the Kepler evacuation. You helped get my daughter off-world before the hegemony orbital bombardment.
I owe you one. Marcus did remember.
A terrified family among thousands of others and a little girl with her father's determined eyes. He had personally made sure they got onto one of the last evacuation ships. Confirmed. Captain Martinez, we're carrying sensitive cargo. If we draw you into this fight, Marcus, you're not drawing us into anything. We've been waiting for this opportunity.
Her voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. Change course. Trust me.
The Meridian's grace altered course toward the nebula, and the pursuing hegemony ships adjusted their formation accordingly. They were close enough now that individual vessel types were visible on the sensors: heavy cruisers, destroyers, and at least 3 dreadnoughts. Enough firepower to reduce a small planet to radioactive dust. As they approached the edge of the nebula, Marcus began to understand what Captain Martinez had planned. The energy readings weren't from a few ships. They were from an entire fleet. As the interference from the nebula's ionized gases cleared, dozens of vessels became visible on sensors.
Dear God, someone whispered. It was the largest gathering of independent ships Marcus had ever seen. Converted freighters bristling with improvised weapons, smuggler vessels whose speed modifications had been adapted for hit-and-run tactics, former military ships that had been captured, stolen, or abandoned by their original crews. And in the center of the formation, the Freehaven itself. 2 kilometers of armored death that had once been a Confederation battlecruiser. All ships, this is Martinez, came the broadcast on open channels. Target locks acquired. Weapons free on my command. The lead hegemony dreadnought responded with typical arrogance. Independent vessels withdraw immediately. You are interfering with a lawful hegemony operation. Martinez's laugh carried across the communication channel. Lawful? Want to talk about lawful? Let me tell you what's lawful. Her voice turned cold, broadcasting now on all frequencies. Marcus watched his communication display light up as a massive data burst went out on every channel simultaneously. Within moments, his own screens were filled with images, documents, and recordings that made his blood run cold. Video footage from inside hegemony research facilities, showing alien children being subjected to horrific experiments. Communications between hegemony commanders discussing the disposal of entire populations. Financial records proving that 3 Galactic Council members had profited from the slave trade, and at the center of it all, the detailed plans for Operation Clean Slate, the systematic genocide of 17 species. Captain, Lyrian's voice came over the intercom from the medical bay. What you're seeing is what we witnessed. What they did to our people, to our families. Captain Martinez has the complete database now. Marcus realized what had happened. While they had been running from Freehold Station, Kane had been transmitting copies of the information to resistance cells throughout the sector. The Free Haven had received their copy and was now broadcasting it to the galaxy. The effect was immediate and dramatic. On every inhabited world within 50 light-years, the transmissions would be received and retransmitted. Within hours, every major news network would have copies. The hegemony's carefully maintained facade of benevolent expansion was being shredded in real time. The hegemony commander's response was predictable. All ships open fire. Destroy the terrorists before they can spread more lies. The space between the 2 fleets erupted in weapons fire. Energy beams and missile contrails crossed the darkness as hundreds of vessels engaged in close combat. The Free Haven proved that its reputation was well earned, its heavy guns carving through hegemony cruisers like they were made of paper. But the independent fleet was outnumbered, and many of their ships were civilian vessels that had never been designed for battle. Within minutes, Marcus watched as a converted mining ship exploded under concentrated fire from a hegemony destroyer. Sir, Lieutenant Kim called out. Captain Martinez is requesting that we proceed to the rally point. She's sending us coordinates. Navigation, comply. Maximum speed. The Meridian's Grace raced through the battle, its crew watching in awe and horror as the largest space battle in decades raged around them. A hegemony cruiser exploded to their port side, its wreckage spinning away into the nebula's depths. To starboard, 3 independent fighters were conducting a desperate attack run on a dreadnought, weaving between its point defense turrets like insects harassing a giant. They reached the coordinates to find something Marcus hadn't expected: a space station. Hidden deep within the nebula's interference, it was clearly a recent construction. The design was functional rather than elegant, built from salvaged components and whatever materials could be acquired by ships operating outside galactic law. Welcome to Haven Station, Captain Martinez's voice came over a private channel. Population approximately 30,000 and growing daily. Refugees, former slaves, anyone who's had enough of hegemony rule. As they docked, Marcus marveled at the scale of what he was seeing. The station's cargo bays were filled with ships from dozens of species, their crews working together to repair battle damage and prepare for whatever came next. Children, human and alien alike, played in recreation areas that had been carved out of converted storage compartments. It was a functioning society built from the cast-offs and discards of galactic civilization.
Captain Martinez met them at the airlock. She was a tall woman with premature gray hair and scars that spoke of too many battles.
Behind her stood representatives of at least 6 different species, all wearing the practical clothing of people who had learned to value function over form. Marcus, good to see you again, though I wish it were under better circumstances. She gestured to the alien representatives. This is the Council of Haven. What passes for government out here? We need to talk. They were led to a conference room that had obviously been constructed from a cargo hold. The table was made from salvaged deck plating and the chairs were a mix of designs from different ships. But the holographic displays were state-of-the-art, showing real-time information feeds from across the galaxy. The broadcast has reached 17 systems so far, one of the alien counselors reported. Her species was unknown to Marcus, but her forearms moved with practiced efficiency as she manipulated the data displays. Major news networks on Corinthia Prime and New Geneva have picked up the story. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. Martinez leaned back in her chair. Marcus, what you brought us is bigger than we ever imagined. The evidence against the hegemony is so complete that even their allies can't deny it. But, Marcus prompted, the hegemony isn't going to go quietly. Intelligence reports suggest they're mobilizing their entire fleet. We're talking about 1,000 ships, including the experimental vessels they've been building with technology stolen from conquered races.
Agent Kane, who had been silent since their arrival, finally spoke up. Captain Martinez, what's the current status of resistance forces throughout the galaxy? Scattered, poorly equipped, and vastly outnumbered, Martinez replied honestly.
We've got maybe 300 ships that could be considered combat-ready, spread across 40 light-years. The hegemony could crush us in detail if they coordinate their response. Unless, said another voice, we don't give them the chance. Marcus turned to see Lyrian entering the conference room, followed by several of the other alien children. Despite their youth, they moved with a purpose that commanded respect from the adults present. Lyrian, Marcus said, you should be resting, Doctor. Santos said the neural purge was exhausting. Captain, with respect, none of us will be resting until this is finished. Lyrian moved to the holographic displays, her enhanced mind already processing the tactical information faster than the computers could update it. The hegemony's response will be predictable. They'll try to secure their research facilities first, then hunt down the source of the leaked information. She manipulated the display highlighting a dozen systems on the strategic map. These are the locations of their major installations. If we strike simultaneously, we can destroy years of research and free thousands of prisoners before they can be relocated. Martinez studied the display with professional interest. It's ambitious, but we don't have the ships for coordinated strikes across such a wide area. You don't, Lyrian agreed, but others do. The display changed, showing ship movement patterns throughout the sector. The information broadcast included communication protocols used by resistance cells on 18 different worlds. For the first time, all the scattered groups fighting the hegemony know how to contact each other. Marcus began to understand. You're talking about a coordinated uprising. More than that, Kane interjected. His cybernetic implants were glowing as he accessed external data networks. I'm seeing movement reports from across the sector. The Altarian Liberation Front has seized control of 3 orbital platforms. The Deneb Resistance is launching attacks on hegemony supply convoys. Even some Galactic Council member worlds are withdrawing their support for hegemony operations. Martinez's expression grew thoughtful. It could work. If everyone moves at once, the hegemony won't be able to respond to all the threats simultaneously. They'll have to choose which targets to protect. And while they're responding to the uprisings, Lyrian continued, we hit their central command facility on Hegemony Prime itself. The conference room fell silent. Hegemony Prime was the most heavily defended world in known space, surrounded by orbital platforms and protected by the largest fleet in the galaxy. It had never been successfully attacked in the 300 years since the hegemony's founding. That's suicide, one of the counselors said flatly. Is it? Agent Kane was manipulating his own displays now, accessing classified intelligence databases. The orbital defenses are designed to stop large fleets, not small, fast ships. And during a sector-wide uprising, most of their mobile forces will be deployed to protect other assets. Martinez studied the tactical projection that Kane was generating. What kind of small, fast ships are we talking about? Something like the Meridian's Grace, for instance. Modified for speed and stealth rather than heavy combat. Kane's expression was grim. Of course, it would still be a one-way mission. Even if the strike succeeded, escape would be virtually impossible. Marcus looked around the table at the faces watching him. These people, humans and aliens alike, had lost everything to the hegemony's expansion. their worlds, their families, their freedom. And now they were asking him to lead them in what amounted to a desperate gamble against impossible odds.
What would the mission objective be? He asked. Lyrian answered. The central data core on Hegemony Prime contains the master records for all their operations, not just the research facilities, but the location of every prison camp, every slave labor site, every world marked for your location. If we could access that data and broadcast it, every resistance cell in the galaxy would know exactly where to strike, Martinez finished. It would turn a scattered uprising into a coordinated war of liberation. Kane nodded. And the hegemony's own security protocols would work against them. The data core is protected by quantum encryption that can only be accessed from the command center itself. They can't simply destroy it without crippling their own command structure.
Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about his crew, about the refugees they had rescued, about the children who had entrusted their lives to his protection. When he opened them, his decision was made.
How long do we have to prepare? Martinez smiled grimly. The uprisings begin in 72 hours. That should give us enough time to modify your ship and plan the approach. And after? Marcus asked. After, Lyrian said quietly, we find out if the galaxy is ready to be free. The modifications to the Meridian's grace had transformed it from a simple transport vessel into something that looked like it had been assembled by mad engineers during a fever dream.
Stealth plating covered the hull in angular patches that would scatter sensor beams. Additional engines had been mounted wherever structural supports could handle the stress.
The cargo bays had been stripped out and replaced with electronic warfare equipment that could jam communications and spoof targeting systems. Marcus ran his hand along the bridge railing, feeling the subtle vibration of systems that had been pushed far beyond their original specifications. In 3 days, Haven Station's engineers had accomplished modifications that should have taken months. Of course, they had also warned him that the ship probably wouldn't survive more than a few hours of sustained operation under these conditions.
Captain? Lyrian's voice came from behind him. She had spent the last 3 days working with Kane and the station's intelligence specialists, planning their approach to Hegemony Prime.
The mathematical precision of her enhanced mind had proven invaluable in calculating orbital mechanics and defense grid rotations.
How are the preparations coming? Marcus asked. The approach vector is optimal.
We'll enter the system during their shift change when sensor coverage has the largest gaps. The electronic warfare suite will mask our signature until we're within 5,000 kilometers of the command center.
Lyrian paused. After that, stealth becomes irrelevant. Marcus nodded.
5,000 kilometers sounded like a vast distance, but in space combat terms it was almost point-blank range. Once they were detected, they would have perhaps 30 seconds before the orbital defense platforms turned them into cosmic dust.
What about the data extraction? That's where we face our biggest challenge. Kane emerged from the ship's modified computer core, his cybernetic implants flickering as they processed multiple data streams simultaneously. The Hegemony Command Center is protected by quantum encrypted barriers that change their configuration every few seconds. Breaking in will require someone to interface directly with their systems.
You mean one of the children, Marcus said.
Their neural enhancements make them the only ones capable of processing information fast enough to crack the encryption in real time. Kane's expression was troubled. But Captain, the strain of interfacing with a system that complex, the children might not survive the process. Before Marcus could respond, voices echoed from the ship's main corridor. The alien children were returning from their final briefing session with the Haven Council. Despite their youth, they had insisted on participating in every aspect of the mission planning. Their enhanced minds had proven capable of strategic thinking that surpassed most military analysts. Captain, Lyrian said as the group approached, we need to discuss the mission assignments. Marcus looked at the assembled children. 43 young beings from 17 different species, each carrying the scars of hegemony experimentation, each determined to strike back at their tormentors. The youngest was barely 8 years old by human standards, the oldest perhaps 16.
None of them should have been planning a military operation. None of them should have been forced to make decisions about life and death.
I've been thinking about that, Marcus said carefully. This mission is too dangerous. I can't ask children to, Captain, Kira interrupted. The little girl who had been unconscious when they first rescued her was now fully recovered, though the neural modifications had given her an adult's composure that was disturbing to see in such a young face. We're not children anymore. The hegemony made sure of that when they enhanced our minds and filled them with their secrets. We've run probability analyses. Another child added. His name was Zeph, and he had been modified to interface with computer systems. Without our enhanced capabilities, the mission has a 3.7% chance of success. With our participation, that increases to 23.8%. Still not good odds, Marcus observed. Better than the odds our species faced when the hegemony came to our worlds, Lyrian replied. Captain, we understand what you're trying to protect us from, but we've already lost our childhoods, our families, our futures. This mission gives us a chance to ensure that what happened to us doesn't happen to others. Marcus looked around at their faces, seeing determination that should have belonged to seasoned warriors, not children who should have been playing games and learning about the wonders of the galaxy. If we do this, he said finally, we all go together.
No one gets left behind. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of final preparations.
The human refugees who had been rescued from Kepler Station volunteered to help with the mission, taking over secondary systems operations so the regular crew could focus on combat duties. Dr. Santos loaded the medical bay with supplies for treating exotic injuries. Commander Walsh ran the tactical systems through test after test, trying to squeeze every possible advantage from their improvised weapons. At 0400 ship time, Captain Martinez visited to see them off. The battle-scarred veteran looked tired, as if the weight of coordinating a sector-wide rebellion was finally catching up with her.
Marcus, the uprisings begin in 6 hours. By the time you reach Hegemony Prime, every resistance cell and 40 systems will be in action. She handed him a datapad.
Final intelligence reports. The hegemony has recalled most of their fleet to respond to the rebellions, but Prime is still defended by 3 orbital platforms and approximately 50 warships.
Any word from the Galactic Council? Martinez's expression grew grim. Emergency session has been ongoing for 2 days. The 3 council members implicated in the intelligence leak have resigned, but the body as a whole is still investigating the allegations. In other words, they're waiting to see who wins before they decide which side they were on all along.
Marcus wasn't surprised. The Galactic Council had spent decades perfecting the art of political survival through calculated neutrality.
Captain Martinez, Lyrian approached carrying a small device that Marcus didn't recognize. This is a quantum communicator.
If we succeed in accessing the Hegemony data core, we'll be able to transmit the information instantly to every resistance cell in the galaxy. But if you fail, the uprisings will collapse within days, Martinez finished.
The Hegemony will learn the locations of all resistance bases and systematically destroy them.
No pressure, Commander Walsh muttered. Martinez clasped Marcus on the shoulder. Marcus, what you're doing, it's either going to save the galaxy or get a lot of good people killed. Probably both.
An hour later, the Meridian's Grace separated from Haven Station and began its journey toward the heart of Hegemony space. The hyperspace transition was rougher than usual. The modifications had affected the ship's mass distribution, making it handle like a drunk elephant in a zero-gravity ballet.
But they reached their cruising velocity and settled in for the 2-day journey to their target. Marcus spent the time walking through his ship, talking with his crew and passengers. The human refugees had organized themselves into support teams, taking over maintenance duties and food service. They worked alongside the alien children, with an easy camaraderie that gave him hope for what the galaxy might become if they succeeded. In the medical bay, Dr. Santos was running final checks on the neural interface equipment that would allow the children to connect with the Hegemony computers. How dangerous is this really? Marcus asked quietly. I won't lie to you, Marcus. The neural strain could cause permanent damage or death. But she gestured to where Kira was helping calibrate the interface equipment, her small hands moving with the precision of a trained technician. Look at them. They're not really children anymore, are they? The Hegemony stole their innocence and replaced it with adult capabilities in young bodies.
Marcus watched as Lyrian worked with Zeph to modify the interface protocols, their enhanced minds processing information faster than the computers could display it. Sometimes I think we're fighting this war to restore something that's already lost.
Maybe, Dr. Santos agreed. But maybe we're fighting to prevent the same thing from happening to other children. Maybe that's enough. On the second day of their journey, Agent Kane detected the first signs that their mission had been compromised. Hegemony patrol ships were moving in search patterns that suggested they knew something was coming.
How could they know? Commander Walsh asked during the emergency briefing. Could be any number of things, Kane replied, his cybernetic eye glowing as he analyzed the intelligence data.
Intercepted communications from the resistance networks. Intelligence assets we don't know about, or simply logical deduction. If I were defending Hegemony Prime, I'd assume that any major uprising was designed to cover a strike at the command center. Lyrian studied the tactical displays showing the increased patrols around their target system. This actually helps us in one way. If they're expecting an attack, they'll be looking for a large fleet,
A single ship might slip through more easily than we originally planned.
Or it might run straight into a patrol, Walsh countered. Marcus looked at the faces around the briefing table. His crew, the alien children who had become part of his ship's complement, Kane with his mysterious agendas and classified knowledge. They were an unlikely collection of rebels, united only by their determination to strike back at the forces that had destroyed their lives.
We continue with the mission, he decided. If the hegemony is expecting us, we'll just have to be more unexpected than they can imagine. 6 hours before their arrival at Hegemony Prime, reports began coming in from across the sector.
The coordinated uprisings had begun and the initial results were encouraging. The Altarian Liberation Front had successfully captured the orbital shipyards at Beta Centauri. Resistance fighters on Deneb Prime had seized control of the planetary communications grid and were broadcasting evidence of hegemony atrocities. 3 council member worlds had declared neutrality and ordered hegemony forces to withdraw from their space. But the hegemony response was swift and brutal.
Entire resistance cells were being wiped out by orbital bombardments. Captured rebels were being executed publicly as a warning to others. The window of opportunity that the uprisings had created was already beginning to close. "Captain," Communications Officer Torres called out. "I'm receiving a transmission from Hegemony Prime. It's on an open channel. Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a Hegemony command vessel.
The alien commander was a member of the Kethvar species, the founding race of the hegemony and its most fanatic supporters. "Human vessel, you are approaching restricted space. Your ship configuration has been identified as that of the terrorist Marcus Chen. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift." Marcus gestured for Torres to open a return channel. "This is Captain Chen. I'm here to accept your surrender." The Kethvar commander's scaled face showed no emotion, but his voice carried a note of amusement. "Humans. Even facing extinction, you maintain your primitive sense of humor. Very well, Captain Chen. Come and claim your victory. We will be waiting." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Well," Commander Walsh said finally, "at least we know they're expecting us." Marcus turned to look at his crew. They were scared he could see it in their faces, but they were also determined. They had come too far and lost too much to turn back now. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship-wide intercom. "In 1 hour, we will drop out of hyperspace at Hegemony Prime.
Our mission is to access their central data core and broadcast the locations of their prison camps and research facilities to the galaxy.
This information will enable resistance forces to liberate millions of enslaved beings and end the hegemony's reign of terror." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I won't lie to you. The odds of survival are minimal. The hegemony has had 300 years to fortify their homeworld and they're waiting for us. But sometimes, the most important victories are won not by the strongest or the best equipped, but by those who refuse to give up when everything seems hopeless." Around the ship, he could hear the sounds of his crew and passengers preparing for battle. Weapons being charged, emergency systems being activated, final messages being recorded for families they might never see again. "In 10 minutes, we will be the most hunted people in the galaxy," Marcus continued. "But right now, in this moment, we have the power to change everything. Let's show them what humans can do when they decide to stop running and start fighting." The Meridian's Grace dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Hegemony Prime system. Its modified sensors immediately beginning to map the defensive installations that protected the Hegemony capital. What they found was even more daunting than their intelligence reports had suggested. Orbital defense platforms the size of small moons. Patrol fleets that could have conquered most star systems single-handedly. And in the center of it all, Hegemony Prime itself, a world that had been transformed into a fortress, its surface covered with command centers, communication arrays, and weapons installations. "Stealth systems are active," Lieutenant Kim reported. "But Captain, with this much sensor coverage, they're going to detect us eventually. How long do we have?" "Maybe 30 minutes before the first patrol ship gets close enough for a detailed scan." Marcus looked at the tactical display one more time, noting the positions of the defense platforms and the patrol routes of the enemy ships. In 30 minutes, they would either strike the blow that would free the galaxy from hegemony tyranny, or they would die trying. "All stations prepare for final approach," he announced. "This is it." The Meridian's Grace drifted through the outer defense perimeter like a ghost, its stealth systems bending sensor waves around the hull while the crew held their collective breath. Through the viewports, Hegemony Prime grew larger, a world that had been transformed from a garden planet into a monument to authoritarian power. The natural continents were barely visible beneath the sprawling complexes of government buildings, military installations, and the massive spires that housed the central command structure. "Passive sensors are picking up massive fleet movements," Science Officer Patel whispered, as if speaking too loudly might give them away.
I count over 300 ships in various orbital positions.
Most of the hegemony's main battle fleet is here. Marcus studied the tactical display with growing concern. Intelligence reports had suggested that most of the fleet would be deployed to respond to the uprisings, but apparently the hegemony commanders had decided that protecting their capital was more important than crushing individual rebellions.
Captain, Agent Kane called softly from his position at the modified sensor station. I'm detecting quantum encrypted communications between the orbital platforms. They're coordinating their search patterns.
Our window is getting smaller. Through the ship's internal communications, Marcus could hear the quiet conversations of his crew and passengers as they prepared for what was almost certainly their final mission.
In the medical bay, the alien children were connecting to the neural interface equipment that would allow them to hack into the hegemony's most secure systems. Dr. Santos monitored their vital signs while Commander Walsh made final adjustments to the ship's weapons. Not that their improvised armaments would make much difference against the firepower arrayed against them. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim reported, "we're approaching the optimal insertion point. 23 minutes until the defense grid rotation creates a gap in sensor coverage." "Lyrian, are your people ready?" Marcus asked through the intercom. "We're as ready as we can be, Captain," came the reply from the medical bay. "Zeph will handle the initial penetration of their computer systems. Kira will map the data core structure while I extract the critical files. The others will maintain the connection and watch for security countermeasures." Marcus marveled at the calm professionalism in her voice. Lyrian was barely 17 years old, but the neural enhancements had given her the tactical thinking of a seasoned intelligence operative.
All of the children spoke the same way now, like adults trapped in young bodies, forced to grow up far too quickly by the cruelty of their circumstances. 15 minutes to insertion, Kim announced. The ship's proximity alarm suddenly began chirping, causing everyone on the bridge to freeze. On the main display, a hegemony patrol ship was changing course, moving toward their general position.
"Did they detect us?" Marcus asked tensely. Kane's cybernetic eye glowed as he processed the incoming sensor data.
"Unknown. They're conducting a standard search pattern, but they're heading directly for our position.
Coincidence or detection? We'll know in about 8 minutes. Marcus watched the approaching patrol ship on the tactical display. It was a destroyer-class vessel, fast and heavily armed. If it detected them, it would summon the entire defense fleet within minutes. "Options?" he asked his bridge crew.
"We could alter course," suggested the navigator. "Move away from the patrol ship's search path. That would delay our approach by at least an hour," Kane pointed out.
"By then, the defense grid rotation will have changed, and we'll lose our optimal insertion window. Or we could take out the patrol ship," Commander Walsh added grimly. "But that would definitely alert the rest of the fleet to our presence."
Marcus considered their options, none of which were particularly appealing.
Delay the mission and risk detection by other patrols, or attack and guarantee immediate discovery. Either choice could doom their operation before it truly began. "Captain," Lyrian's voice came over the intercom. "May I suggest a third option?" "I'm listening. The patrol ship is conducting an automated search pattern. If we can hack into its navigation system and introduce a small error, we can cause it to slightly alter course without the crew realizing anything is wrong." Kane looked up from his console. "That's actually possible. The hegemony's ship navigation systems have security vulnerabilities that we've identified, but it would require someone to interface directly with their computer network." "I can do it," came a young voice from the medical bay. It was Zeph, the boy who had been modified to interface with computer systems. "I just need a direct communication link with their ship." "That's extremely dangerous," Dr. Santos interjected. "If they detect the intrusion, they could send a feedback pulse that would kill you." "Doctor," Zeph replied with a matter-of-fact tone that all the enhanced children had adopted, "if we're detected, we're all going to die anyway. At least this way we have a chance." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, hating the position they were all in. A 12-year-old boy was volunteering for a mission that could kill him, and Marcus was actually considering accepting that volunteer. The war had turned them all into monsters. "Do it," he said finally. The next 5 minutes were among the longest of Marcus's life. On the bridge, they watched the patrol ships approach while listening to Dr. Santos provide updates on Zeph's condition as he interfaced with the hegemony vessel's navigation system. "Neural activity is spiking," Santos reported. "He's encountering heavier security than expected." "Zeph," Marcus called over the intercom. "If it's too dangerous, abort the attempt." "Almost got it," came the strained reply. "There. Navigation error introduced. The ship should alter course by 3 degrees. In about 2 minutes." The communication line went silent. "Zeph?" "Doctor." Santos called. Zeph, respond, please. After what seemed like an eternity, the boy's voice returned. Weak, but alive. I'm all right, Doctor. Just tired. Very tired. On the tactical display, the patrol ship began to change course, moving away from their position by exactly 3 degrees. The alteration was so small that the crew probably wouldn't notice unless they checked their navigation computers very carefully. Outstanding work, Marcus said over the intercom.
All hands prepare for final approach. The Meridian's Grace continued its stealthy approach toward Hegemon Prime, using the gap in sensor coverage that the defense grid rotation had created. As they drew closer to the planet, the true scale of the Hegemon's power became apparent. The capital city sprawled across an entire continent, its buildings rising into the clouds like metallic mountains. Orbital elevators connected the surface to massive space stations that served as both transportation hubs and defensive platforms.
Target acquisition, Kane announced. The Central Command Complex is located in the Northern Hemisphere, coordinates logged. I'm reading massive signal traffic. They're definitely coordinating the response to the uprisings from this location. How are we doing on the uprisings? Marcus asked. Kane's expression grew grim as he accessed intelligence reports. Mixed results. The Altarian Liberation Front has been crushed. Orbital bombardment destroyed their captured shipyards in.